forward the absolutely gorgeous McLaren Senna here on my left. So exiting the cockpit, please allow me to introduce to you Mark Roberts, Head of Design Operations at McLaren Automotive and a founding member of the McLaren F1 design team. Mark, welcome. We've got a chance. Give you a quick shake and then we'll be across the pond, as they say. Share our respective chairs. Yeah, glad to have you here. So, Mark, I can't help but catch the note here about being part of, please be seated, the design team for the famous McLaren F1 road car back in 1990. I have to ask, that's 28 years, it's just a dream job. How did you get this job in the first place?
I was only 10 when I joined. Yeah, it was a long while ago, so much so, I actually wrote a letter to Gordon Murray.
Not an email?
No, it was pre-email. He put the word out that he wanted to put together a team to build the ultimate driver's car, which turned into the F1, and I just had to be involved. So I wrote him a letter, went down for an interview, and I'm still there.
So this is the Canadian debut for the Senna. It's named, of course, after McLaren F1's famous world championship driver, Ayrton Senna, my favorite driver of all time, in fact. And it's the most track-worthy, road-legal car McLaren has ever produced. It has blistering lap times. I've read some of the reviews. And stunning design, of course, but it's a car, Mark, without compromise. And I have to ask you, when I think about a car without compromise, coming from a racing background, you know, the formula that always matters is power to weight. And Formula One embraces that every year. We saw that this morning. But what does the weight race mean to McLaren? What does it mean to win that as McLaren, that weight race, to be the best on power to weight?
I think I would say it's the most important deliverable in the design studio for the designers and the engineering team. We are completely obsessed with lightweight. And that goes right back to 1981 with the original MP41 Formula One car. We were the first to make a carbon fiber composite car basically for the track. So you know, we genuinely are the pioneers of carbon fiber. By the end of that season, everyone else had either switched or was planning to switch from the old school aluminium riveted construction to composite. And that mindset has gone right through to this car today, this contemporary McLaren. The underpinnings of every car since the MP41, since 1981, have been a carbon fibre monocoque and carbon fibre panels like this. So it really is a complete mindset for us to deliver on. And I would always say that if you get the car, if you focus on the lightweight, you get everything else for free pretty much. You know, you get fuel, you get good fuel consumption, you get agility, you get performance times, acceleration, top speed. That all follows with the lightweight mindset.
Mark, the company has a stated production goal a few years out of 6,000 to 7,000 units a year, but with these complex composite construction, what are the challenges, and how soon do you think you can get to that volume, knowing what's involved to produce carbon fiber through and through?
So our business plan is called Track 25. So it takes us from this point in time to 2025. We've got 18 new vehicles to deliver between now and then, and basically we have to up the volume. Currently we're running around 4,500 cars a year, which equates to between 20 to 22 cars a day, which doesn't sound much, but for a small company like McLaren, it's a big deal and a big challenge. So by 2025 we'll be into the 6,000s, and it is a real challenge for the guys. It's not only the teams on the production line, but it's also our supply chain. It's putting a big demand on them to step up their ability to deliver to a higher volume. But we also want to keep the exclusivity, so we never really want to be building more than 6,000 to 7,000 cars because we want these cars to be special.
You talk about getting to 18 new models coming over the next few years. I've had the pleasure of driving the 720S, a phenomenal vehicle. Hard to imagine that's street legal, let alone this thing. I can't help but notice the looming British brute over our shoulders here. Any chance that this could be part of the 18 new models, a McLaren SUV? Is that in the realm?
I can easily answer that and say no. Nice try though. We really do deliver on the ultimate driving experience, and for us it means no compromise. You know, this is the absolute expression of that. We want the driver to feel the hairs on their neck standing up, and we want them to feel that they're really attached to the car, and they feel every essence of the driving experience. And for us, an SUV doesn't allow us to deliver on that. It's not for us a no compromise kind of vehicle. But these guys are doing a good job.
Terrific. Well, maybe a two-seat SUV.
No.
All right. Well, what you heard it loud and clear.
It's not going to happen.
What information do you think you could kind of provide us on the planned successor to the ultra-successful P1? I mean, you started. Why don't you just take us back first, because you started with the McLaren F1 and then you saw through to the P1. Talk to us about that evolution and where it's going.
So I would liken the design brief to the F1, those 28 years ago. The same brief basically for the P1, which was 5 or 6 years ago. It was to create the ultimate driver's car, the ultimate driving experience. The main difference was obviously 28 years of technology, but also the mindset for the F1 from Gordon Murray was very much an analog car, if you like. He absolutely didn't want ABS, ESP, traction control. He wanted it to be a true kind of seat-of-your-pants driver's car. Whereas P1, we specifically went out to use the technology and use the improved aerodynamic knowledge and so on, put every bit of technology into that car to create the ultimate driving experience. We will do a replacement for P1, and it's part of the Track 25 plan. I can't tell you when, but it's coming up for us very soon on our schedule in the design studio. And it's a different animal to this. I would say this is you just look at it, it's a race car, but it happens to be street legal. You know, the design language of it is all about sucking in the maximum amount of air so the car can breathe. It's about managing airflow over, under and through the car so it sticks to the road. And it's absolutely no compromise. The P1 replacement, like P1, has to deliver on beauty. You know, it's going to be a beautiful sculptural road car, but it's going to be the fastest car on the road, and it'll be pretty useful on a track as well. So subtle but different in terms of what the deliverable is for P1.
Let's talk about 2025 and that plan, because as I understand it, the announcement is to go completely hybrid by that time. Can you explain the rationale behind that?
That's correct, yeah. Yes, so 2025, all of our vehicles will be hybrid. We're developing a new high-performance, super fast charging battery technology that's going to give you at least 30 minutes of electric range in a car, which is going to be pretty phenomenal. That's our focus in terms of Track 25, and yeah, we did it with P1. P1 was the first hybrid vehicle 5 or 6 years ago. We delivered on that. What I love with McLaren though is, yes, a hybrid vehicle will lower your CO2 emissions and give you improved fuel economy, but for us, it actually improves the performance. So we're using that technology to make the car faster. Obviously, electric motor, 0 RPM, and you're getting maximum torque. So think about this sort of vehicle with a hybrid unit in it as well. It's really going to add to the performance and the driving experience.
Mark, thinking about Canada specifically, what sort of growth plans does the brand have here?
This is the first time I've been to Canada. It's been a real education the last sort of 48 hours for me here. I didn't realise how obsessive you guys are with supercars. And when I found out more about FAF, the dealership, and you know they were our global retailer of the year, it's phenomenal. And what I can't get my head around is you can't even drive your cars for 6 months of the year, and you're our best customers. It's pretty phenomenal. So that attached to Track 25, 18 new vehicles. Watch this space because we've got a lot of cars coming your way. So yes, it's a good market here.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Mark. Stick around, please, because we're going to have a little group discussion here. But I wanted to introduce from England as well, representing Rolls-Royce. This is Alex Innes, who's going to roll the new Cullinan out to the stage. Alex, come on out. Welcome.
Thank you, thank you.
So smooth and elegant with the driving.
I got that bit right. That was the high pressure bit.
So Alex is a member of the design team at Rolls-Royce. He's been there for the past decade, and among his accolades is the design of Rolls-Royce first foray, obviously, into the SUV market with the Cullinan. And I think the Cullinan is really going to redefine what an SUV is. It already has. It's super luxury, it's all-terrain, it's refined, yet rugged, and this is what I think we would all expect from a Rolls-Royce SUV. But Alex, I have to put myself in your shoes. I can't really, but I have to imagine, what was it like a few years ago when somebody came to you at Rolls-Royce and said, right, you're going to lead up the design of an SUV. It's like a sushi chef being told he's going to make hamburgers. What happened in that moment? What was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was, as you put it delicately, it was an abstract sort of concept for us. But it sort of, I mean, first and foremost, it was something that our customers were asking for. And they had been asking for some time. But that said, it was a concept that we really grappled with. And we really did struggle to get our heads around, how we could translate all of the characteristics and all the attributes of a Rolls-Royce onto a package that is somewhat, at least in the first instance, feels somewhat foreign to us. And there were sort of two threads of thinking that were prompted off the back of that conversation. The first was that if we were to do it, it had to be an authentic representation of the brand. That is to say that we always think about our cars, they're sort of carriages of successful people, they're limousines that move people around, a means of conveyance with the utmost level of luxury. And the thinking was that, well, if we could translate that and make it that it could go everywhere, then we would stand a chance of it being an authentic representation of the brand. So it really was, as Luce is saying, well, it has to be effortless everywhere. And that was the kind of the guiding thinking, if you like, at the time. The second part that I mentioned was that actually it's not such a foreign concept for a Rolls-Royce, this idea of these beautiful carriages going off-road. And it required us to sort of delve back into our history. And it was actually, it was part of the First World War, where a lot of our cars were commandeered and used as military vehicles because of their reliability in a lot of these hostile environments. And it was actually T.E. Lawrence, and he famously sort of commandeered this Rolls-Royce. It was a Silver Ghost at the time, for the streets of Cairo, and there was a famous story where he sort of burst into a restaurant and there was a lady eating oysters, and he sort of told her that he was taking her car and never was she to see it again. And he used that for a period of time, in a very, very hostile environment in the deserts, and he sort of coined the phrase of the, Rolls-Royce was worth more than rubies in the desert. So it was all of that sort of at the back of our mind that I guess kind of gave us the reassurance that actually it's not such an unfamiliar thing, and that was about 5 years ago, and that sort of set us on a course for the beginnings of the design of the car, if you like.
A lot of manufacturers would set about to develop a rugged off-roader, if you will, if you think about the functional elements of this vehicle, by secretly testing away in Death Valley, for instance, or up in Finland in the north in the snow, but your company took a different approach. I think it reflected a lot of your confidence and experience in rugged environments. What was that?
Well, indeed. I mean, I sort of touched on it earlier. I mean, the backbone of Rolls-Royce is one of authenticity. We take great pride in the development of our cars, and we stand proudly behind them. So if we were to do an off-roader, it had to be exactly that. It had to be zero compromise in terms of its capability off-road, but moreover that it could deliver this serene and tranquil cabin and have that effortless driving experience in the most hostile environments of the world. And usually is the case, as Mark will be more than familiar with, testing is a kind of hidden part of the industry where we don't expose it. But with this car, towards the latter stages of development, we actually partnered with National Geographic, and we took them along for the ride into some, 4 continents basically, into some really rugged terrain in the sort of highlands of Scotland, the dunes of Dubai, and out here actually, in the Americas we were bounding around the Rockies. And we offered them total transparency, so they could capture some beautiful imagery of this car in environments that you wouldn't expect to find a Rolls-Royce in.
I have to confess that I did see a few of your engineers in a camouflaged Cullinan in Malibu, just so you know. So somehow the diversion took them to the California coast. But talk us through the design language here, if you wouldn't mind, kind of starting at the front of the vehicle, and from your point of view and with your responsibility, how did you go about creating what we see here in front of us?
Well, indeed, I mean, maybe just to sort of take a step back in terms of, let's say, the character of the car. I mean, it's no surprise to anyone here that SUVs, it is this sort of burgeoning part of the market at the moment. But there is also this consensus to sort of lushly styled and svelte-looking SUVs, and that was something that didn't really sit comfortably with us. If you break down the acumen, you know, sports utility vehicle, or Rolls-Royce is never sporting. So that was the bit that we really struggled with. So we were quite clear at the early stages of the sketch development that we wanted it to have a strength of character. We wanted Cullinan to really stand apart from anything else, this sort of ubiquitous backdrop of SUVs as we know them today. And I think that's perhaps no more apparent than here at the front end. You know, our iconic Pantheon grille sits higher here than it ever has done in history. And in doing so, it informs this very, very pronounced engine cowl, which is a nice nod, a visual nod, if you like, to the sort of power and potential that lies beneath the bonnet. And to the flanks, these sort of boldly offset and recessed surfaces, they project a sort of visual toughness to the car. And some other tricks just to exaggerate the vertical proportion at the front. We wanted it to sort of stand proud. It had to have this clear sense of authority, and to project that from the front. And towards the side, one of my personal favourite sort of elements of the design is the unique stance that Cullinan carries. And those of you familiar with Rolls-Royce will know that they've often got very regal and sort of majestic lines, and everything very gently falls and tapers towards the rear. With Cullinan, it's actually got a bit of attitude. The shoulder line actually lifts into the glasshouse, so the car kind of primes forward for the first time ever. And that's a relatively sort of new thing for a Rolls-Royce. And we wanted the car to have this very different gesture by way of its silhouette.
Would you talk a little bit about, probably more so appropriate inside the vehicle in terms of bespoke offerings? Because, you know, when I think of a Rolls-Royce customer, they must be creative in their demands and really unique. How has that side of the business evolved in terms of bespoke offerings?
Well, yeah, I mean, luxury, or rather, actually, it's driven by exactly the people that you described, the aficionados, the people of astute taste. You know, that is an ever-moving sort of feat, and, you know, with it, we've got to sort of respond. And actually, what we have come to learn is that luxury is deeply personal. And therefore, it's our ability to allow a customer, a patron of the brand, if you like, to commission a car, and we very much do think of it as a commission, to reflect the individual tastes and desires of themselves. You know, we always joke that no two Rolls-Royces are the same, and the reality is that's because they're a reflection of the customer. You know, no two people are the same, and therefore the cars are created in that sort of image, if you like. So we have more flexibility on the inside of Cullinan, and also with Phantom now, to offer that level of personalisation to really new heights that we've never experienced before.
Yeah, fascinating to see the bespoke, we'll get into this a little later, but the bespoke offerings at McLaren, that you see that's grown, and then in the luxury space. But I think it's appropriate now to pivot to the third car we have on stage, which certainly falls into some sort of bespoke discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to bring forward the Devel 16. Listen to this. Debut for the Devel 16, and the gentleman standing next to me, Majid Alatar, designer, creator of this amazing beast. Please take a seat next to your beautiful creation. Majid comes all the way from Dubai with us, where he and his brothers have built this as the first car to ever come from their city of Dubai. And for car lovers that have been hearing about this car in bits and pieces over the past few years, it is sensational. Never before seen in this part of the world, and here it is, a massive, let me make sure this is not a typo, V16.
Yes.
I I think you told me earlier, over 12 liters.
It is the 12.3 cc.
12.3 liters. 5,000 horsepower.
5,007 horsepower.
5,007.
Yes.
Thank goodness we got over 5,000 because I was going to be really disappointed if we were in the fours. Wow. Okay. Lot to discuss here. I mean, you gotta, Majid, you can't help but ask the obvious question. Part of me wants to say, what in the world were you thinking? But how cool. What were you thinking? Where did this idea come from?
To be honest, we've been, you know, when you live in Dubai, you'll be seeing many fast cars and Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Italian nice cars.
Yeah.
But you know, when you want to stand up and you want to create something little more special, you have to do many changes. Because when you're driving a very special car, you will see another special car passing by, maybe more special than what you have, a more limited edition. So me and my brothers was thinking, what is something new? You know, we need to get something new, and really, it's going to be for us, you know, not for the world to see.
Yeah.
And somewhere in 2006, it's just a joke, you know. We was just trying to do some sketching and, you know, some drawing, and we came to some nice designs which we was inspired by jet fighter, the F-15, F-16, mostly jet fighter. And we really started doing some clay models, and really things started to happen. And in 2009, we came with the first design, which was very similar to the F-15 jet fighter. You know, the story is funny a little bit, because this car wasn't supposed to be shown to anybody in the world, and the engine wasn't supposed to be the V16. It was supposed to be two-jet engine. Yeah. And if you say 5,000 horsepower, I tell you, no, we was targeting 10,000 horsepower.
Wow.
Yeah, really, we got the engine, and we got you know, a pilot, American pilot, to help us with it.
They didn't know what they wanted until they saw it. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my God, I've got to have that on my car. I've got to have this. I've got to have that. And they do love that. They love bespoking the cars.
I mean, all of you have tremendous demand for these three vehicles in front of us. Mark, we talked about being the McLaren Senna being sold out in the first hour, right? 500 units gone. The Cullinan, huge demand globally for this. You've spoken of the immediate demand when you showed this car in 2013. Majid, what do you think is driving that demand? Why is the appetite seemingly endless right now for these sorts of vehicles?
I think everybody want to be special when they drive. Not only cars, you know, watch, mobiles. Everybody want to have something special, unique, personal.
Yeah.
That's why this is what making the demand.
You sound like my wife every time I buy a motorcycle. Everybody wants to be special. Everyone's happy. So how about you, Alex? From the Rolls-Royce perspective, obviously you're flanked by two ultra-high performance vehicles, you know, speed and agility. You sit in a high luxury segment, ultra-high luxury segment. What does that demand feel like in terms of its source? Where does it come from?
Well, I think, you know, what we do and the way we behave is a reflection of the exacting requirements that come from our customers. You know, and I think also to be very open with the audience, you know, nobody needs a Rolls Royce, right? And I say that very seriously, probably in the same way that nobody needs any one of these three cars. And therefore, you have to, as a designer, you really have to question what's the motivating factor for buying a car like this. You know, a Rolls Royce is a very strong outward expression of success, and therefore, someone is buying it to enjoy, you know, to celebrate their success, and you know, someone who has that confidence that's very happy with everyone else enjoying their success, and that's a characteristic that you recognise in all three of the cars that are presented here today.
Yeah. So the undeniable question then is, looking forward, you know, Mark, what do you see for the future of this marketplace? I mean, it is so robust, it's so vibrant. Just when you think that the P1 is the bar, the Senna comes. We've got 5,000 horsepower here, and it just keeps ratcheting up and up and up. I love it. I think it's amazing. In fact, I wish racing was following the road car business a little more closely from performance. But what does the forecast look like from McLaren's position?
I mean, we have a full EV vehicle running at the moment, a test and development.
Sorry, you said full EV?
Electrical, just a full electric vehicle. It's going to be a while before we release that as a production model, but that is on our radar. And ultimately, well, legislation is going to dictate that we all have to go that route, into the future. But so that's something we need to focus on. And for us, the challenge is in the sort of supercar, hypercar bracket is how that fits in with our brand. So that's quite a challenge for us. But we've got time to get our heads around it. But it's definitely something that we're working on now, and it is going to be the future, full electric.
Alex, I live in Southern California. We are overwhelmed with Tesla mania in the neighborhood. And obviously Tesla, California company. But when you think about electric, I've long felt that electric is the ultimate luxury solution. Quiet, linear. It reminds me of a private jet, thrusting down the runway. Where does Rolls-Royce sit in that EV outlook?
Well, I mean, it is clearly part of our future, and our CEO has actually been quoted as such that battery electric vehicles is where Rolls-Royce is heading, for exactly the sort of synergies that you mentioned. It's huge amounts of torque at 0 RPM, it's silent motoring, it's ironically for cars of this scale, it's generally urban environments where you're returning to the same point of departure. So for charging and the habits of charging, it's perfect. And it's also more than likely that we will skip the hybrid step in between. So that's quite a bold future that we're set on. But at the same time, just as this has to be the Rolls-Royce representation of an SUV, a battery electric vehicle, we have to stay true to the characteristics of Rolls-Royce. And at the moment, such are the sort of the characteristics of it. It's not effortless just yet. We're working very hard on that in terms of the charging, the ranges, and everything that comes with it. But you can rest assured that electric will play a strong part in the future of this great brand.
Ajit, can we consider you the holdouts? I mean, going back to that jet engine maybe going forward, how do you look at the powertrain opportunities or the challenges when you're trying to sell and develop in this space?
For this kind of things, there will be people who still love the petrol cars,
Yeah.
But for our future plans, we're considering also electric cars, definitely.
Yeah. Terrific.
Yeah.
I want to thank you all for joining us here. You've come a long way to share 3 beautiful pieces of vehicular jewelry. We really appreciate your time and your commitment to fueling the passion that's within us. So thank you all for joining us today. I want you to feel free to come to the stage. We're going to do a photo call here with our